So does your salt have microplastics in it? Yeah, it does. But which salt has the most microplastics? Salt in particular has high amounts of microplastics because of the scale of pollution in our water, right? And salt comes from our water. We know that microplastics can cross the blood-brain barrier and actually lead to an increase of inflammation in our brain, which is associated with accelerated neurodegeneration. Places that have the worst amount of pollution probably also have the most amount of microplastics in their salt. And that's exactly what multiple studies have shown. So this one actually studied salt from 8 different countries. It was a total of 17 different salt brands. There was only one that they found didn't have microplastics. France had 0 microplastics. Cool. I'm surprised that there was any samples that had 0, as the Asian countries had the most. And you also have to remember the majority of plastic manufacturing is done in Asia. Those Asian countries have significantly higher amounts of plastic. Results indicate that not only is Asia a hotspot of global plastic pollution, as previous studies have suggested, but also that sea salt can be a good indicator of the magnitude of microplastic pollution in the surrounding environment. Yeah, sea salt had the highest amount of microplastics next to rock salt, which had much lower quantities of microplastics, and then lake salt had even lower below that. US was actually relatively low, but the microplastic content in sea salt for China was extremely high. Less refined the salt was, definitely the more it had. So your super processed refined salt is actually going to have far less microplastics than other sea salt that you're going to find. And so red actually is rock salt. So the rock salt in the US was a little bit higher in microplastics than our sea salt, but our sea salt was really low. Think about where salt comes from, and you want to try and get it from places that don't have really high amounts of microplastic pollution. I actually love these guys. Their smoked salt is like amazing, or just like your regular Morton's sea salt. Probably the most famous one comes from the Utah's Great Salt Lake. So it's going to have far lower plastics than you would get from like your Himalayan sea salt or something like that.